Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what I found quite fascinating.
Okay, we're on air. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tavola Aperta. This is a special project that Christine Massel, this year's curator of the 57th International Art Exhibition, Viva Arte Viva, created as a moment in which we can have a very convivial and informal conversation with the artists in order to hear what they have to say about their work. So we can ask them questions. It's an open table, as the title says, so you're all invited to participate in the discussion. It's not supposed to be a conversation between me and the artist. Our guest today is Søren Engsted. He is exhibiting in the Pavilion of the Artists and the Books in the Giardini, in the Central Pavilion. I don't know how many of you saw the work already. I hope most of you did. His installation is a video called Levitation. And it's a work that was originally done in 2010. There was also, during the opening week of the Biennale, he did a performance where he redid the work, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So I would like to start by asking you to tell us something about this work, how you got the idea, when it started, what was the making of it.
The making of it, it's as you said, a work from 2010, and it was done in a small off-space, artist-run space in Copenhagen, as a Friday night performance. And I think the idea, I got inspired on a trip to India, where I saw some street performers doing magic tricks, where they would do all kind of magic tricks. They would make a coconut roll around by itself, make smoke come out of their hands, and they would pretend that they had magic powers, and people would bring their ill people to their performance in the hope of getting cured, and they would give the performance money in the hope of being cured. And that was a quite bizarre moment there, and I guess they got quite some money out of it. But then, in the middle of the whole performance, then they suddenly revealed their tricks to kind of. So it was a kind of an enlightenment project in the end, where they would show people don't go with charlatans, or don't believe in everything. I don't know. And then somehow I got this chair, the idea of the chair, out of it, and I wanted to see if I could use this kind of cheap tricks to create a work that would suit in the art context in a way, because there's still this idea of art as something very elevated. So I wanted to use this kind of street performance trick, and also I've been interested in how to use a functional object in a way, how you can use an object to as a stage, or kind of as a tool to create a performance. Was that?
So, and how do you come upon the text? Because it's about what you say also, because levitation is all about gravity and flying and being light in the air or not being light in the air. But there are a lot of funny stories that you, in a certain sense, tell the audience. So how did you come upon the story, the script, the text?
I wanted to look into the history of levitation, and I found a lot of anecdotes that I really liked, and I thought that I wanted to then do a lecture on the levitation chair, and yeah, and then it turned out quite funny because I don't know, I like it that way. I wanted it to. I mean, there was also a lot of mistakes, and that so it was also in the end very improvised, and that's. I think that can sometimes create something very special when you don't really have the control, but you try to maneuver, you try to navigate, you try to keep the control. So it was also a play with control and losing control in a way, because I forgot the text a lot of the time, and
So you improvised.
I improvised a lot. Yeah, I really did.
And how comfortable was it having holding a lecture from a
No, it's
levitation chair?
No, it's never comfortable to do a performance. That's. But I was sitting. I trained, of course, to sit in a way that would look chilled. So I could sit up there for 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, so that was what it could last as a maximum.
Well, I didn't actually. When I did the performance here, I decided for myself that okay, I haven't sat on it since 2010, so I wanted to be the performance the first time that I would sit on it again, and so it took 3 performances to kind of get the right way of sitting, in a way, to get the right balance.
Yeah, you wanted to ask it. Could I just kindly ask you to use a microphone? Yeah, thank you.
Have you
It's working.
have you ever considered to do this performance rather than in an art environment somewhere along the street, because that's where it comes from, and that you know, there maybe don't meet the expectation or so?
Yes, I have considered that.
And have you done it?
No,
Why?
I didn't have the chain somehow.
Okay.
I didn't have the. I thought about it, but I didn't do it. That's the short answer. I don't know what to say why I didn't do it. I don't know. I was invited to do it here, so I did it here.
Yes. Okay, I have a question here.
Thank you. One of the aspects maybe of this work is the idea of people believing something that is not true. So there is this idea of trust behind that. Why do you think there are certain people who like to believe things? In this case, it's quite obvious that this is an artifact. But people still want to believe something, and they participate in this sort of ritual. Do you have an idea about that? And maybe there is another group of people who openly do not believe, and they show others that they don't want to believe this.
But I think it's. I mean, some of the, you know, the whole show business. It's built on this kind of, you could call it secular magic, where you are told something, but it's not about if it's right or wrong. You just put it in a context where it's okay that you are tricked or you are cheated in a way. It's a whole kind of fictional context, and that's also, of course, the art world is also a kind of, in a way, a fictional or a artificial context where it's. I mean, you know that you're not being told the truth necessarily, or kind of the truth from reality. It's a kind of dysfunctional reality. But I think it's something very deep in us that we want to believe, you know, that we are not just this kind of the Danish word is nøgtern. What can we say? We're not just objective all the time. We are tricked by our eyes and our feelings, our beliefs, and so on. And I think that's a part of being human in the end. So, was that an answer?
Yeah, sure.
So another question is that work of art also supposed to be a sort of comment on the world of art nowadays? I mean, also people believing in art like religion or not believing, or is it something like that?
You mean a comment on the state of the art world?
Yes.
Well, I have more thought about it as a kind of comment on the... I ate before, so I was warned that I wouldn't have any time to eat. It's okay, I'm pretty full. But I was kind of trying to play with the notion of art as something elevated, or something that could kind of lift you up in a way, something that, and that's I don't have a clear answer to that, but that was something that struck me, that I kind of like this idea that it's maybe a 19th century of the idea of art, that art have to, a romantic idea or something, that have to lift you up and free you from all the shit of the world. Yeah, that's a positive idea in many ways. But I think a lot of art has also since then been about, going back to something more ordinary. After the Second World War, I think it was very much about doing something in, Pressbarn, or some very humble things.
Yes, please.
I remember the work where you played with this central heating system that is center of a room.
Yeah.
This is exactly what you said now, that you take something very ordinary and make it visible, and by doing so, he used the pipes from a central heating system in the center of a room to create a sculpture, and it was the heated sculpture, wasn't it called something like that?
I think it didn't have a title.
Yeah, it was a blanket over it, and there was a kind of mass of these pipes coming together, and this is also elevating something very ordinary into something special, and especially at this moment, the crisis, many people have nothing to live in, no warm rooms. This is a statement. Is there a political thinking concept behind?
I will say not directly. I mean, of course, I have my political views, but I try to first of all work with the kind of the formal aspects in a way. But of course you can interpret like lifting something ordinary up to something. Of course there's some ideas behind that, and but I also, in the beginning of my work, I was also very interested in kind of negating the history of, traditional sculpture, to kind of negate that, Just a simple example as the plinth, that was something I was very interested in, how you could elevate things or put things up to, look here, this is something special. You can play with that a lot, and that's still something I really love doing, like turning shit into gold. That's So I use a lot of found materials, a lot of everyday objects, things I find, object trouvé, and things I found I usually, a lot of the time I use materials or ideas that I found around the exhibition space or in the social, historical context of where I exhibit, or also it could also just be things around my studio or in the context where my studio is. Yeah, but with this piece you're talking about, it was also to where in a way to use something that was already there, the heating in the room, but then make it into a sculpture that you could also touch, that the exhibitors would touch, because it was a hot pipe, and this copper that it was made of would start, because people always have sweat hands when they go and look at artwork, so they would touch the copper pipe, and they would start a oxidation process that would be continued by all the viewers in a way. And but it was also to create a kind of what could you say, a meteorological or immaterial extension of the sculpture that would fill the room.
I have a question. Where's your studio? What does it look like, and how does it function, and how do you work within it?
Until recently, I have been changing studio more or less every year, because in Copenhagen, where I live, there's this gentrification process going on, so I would jump from stone to stone and change studio a lot. And and that has been like that for some time, but now I got a studio just next to the airport in Copenhagen with together with a very nice, good friend of mine, a composer, and so I'm gonna stay there for a long time now. And it's an old warehouse, and we are building. It's 8 meters to the ceiling, so we can build an extra floor in there. Was that a? Yeah. You ask what I have my studio. How I work in my space? Well, I would say it depends a lot what I'm, because if I work, for instance, for the Biennale, it's more with a goal, sort of, to kind of do those chairs, for example. Other times it's like more I gather objects that I find interesting in the studio, and I try to craft them. I try to put them together with other objects. I try to think about them, look at them, spend time with them, and I mean, but that's also a luxury if you really have time to spend with your objects before they get out there. But sometimes it's just a matter of producing, and then they have to go. But I like spending time in my studio a lot. That's important.
Yeah, please.
Do you think that the work Levitation works better as a video or as a performance? And my second question is, how important was to entertain the audience? Because you also make the pauses, and there was the description that the audience is laughing like in a comedy show.
Yeah, we were actually thinking how to make the translation of because the English is really bad, and how do we translate that, and but I think we more or less just chose a kind of standard, I think it's called something like standard BBC line of translating, and there you also translate the laugh, sort of. I kind of like that twist to it. Sorry, what was your other question?
If you think that the work works as good as a video or as a performance, like if you do it live or if it's shown on video?
Well, I don't think I'm the one to ask, because I haven't seen the performance. I enjoy it more as a video. That I can actually sit there and look and enjoy the piece. And you ask if I think it should be entertaining. Yes, I do like things that are at least not boring to look at or to engage with. But I think for me, entertainment, that's a very broad definition. I mean, I don't think entertainment in a classical sense, where you have to keep the audience all the time. But of course, when you exhibit in a Biennale, you have to, I mean, you can't have a too long pause because then there's no audience here. So the works have to be, in a way, entertaining because otherwise you not get anyone to see your work. So that's really, that's one of the criteria here, I think, and especially to videos that take some time and some commitment in order to see them. So they can't be too long, I think, and not too...
Yes, please.
I don't know that piece actually, but what is it called again? I didn't hear it so well.
Just 1 second, maybe the microphone is not working. Could you pass this one?
Okay, again.
Okay.
I was just asking myself whether it's a hidden comment to a Bill Viola piece. I don't recall the perfect title of it, but it's showing a man rising out of his sea into the heaven. I think it's also called The Levitation.
I don't know the piece. To be frank, Bill Viola, he's not an artist that I look very much at.
Because it's very different in atmosphere, although it's a levitation piece as well, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it is, yeah. I mean, I think he's very into the divine. He's very interested in the divine and Zen Buddhism.
So you were more interested into breaking all these illusions?
Well, in a way, yeah. I'm more a kind of iconoclast, I would say, if that makes sense.
And did you see any difference in the perception of your work in the performance when you did it in Copenhagen and when you did it in Venice in the Biennale?
Yeah, it's a total different context. The first time I did it in Copenhagen, it was a Friday night performance, and we did a party afterwards.
The chicken
Chicky grill bar, and you know, it was a kind of an art crowd from people knew each other. It was a quite small group of people in the end. So of course there was a different atmosphere. You can't have the same focus. At least it was for me. It was much more fun in a way to perform in this environment. It was more kind of being very professional to perform at the Biennale.
Yeah.
And it's a bigger space, and yeah, it's a very different context, and it was much more scripted, everything I did. So.
And did you forget some lines, like in the first one, and improvise, or?
Not so much actually, but actually, Christine Marcel, she came in walking through the performance when I did it. That was a moment that I appreciated very much because. It was a good, in German, Zufall, what you call coincidence.
Okay, yeah, sure.
What did it mean for you to be invited to the Biennale? This is also a form of elevation, so to speak. As you said, when she was walking through, it was a special moment. So I feel there's. What does it mean for you? Or have you arrived now at a certain level of in the art world?
Of course, suddenly you go from being seen by not so many people to potentially being seen by, I don't know, between 300,000 and 500,000 people. So that means a lot, of course. That's so of course it's a big honor to participate. It's a historical place, and you know, when you start being interested in art, you go here to see the Biennale. That's sort of obligatory, and it's something that people talk about. So it's so of course it's easier to convince people about your work after you got this kind of stamp.
And this piece of work, it was from 2010. It was redone as a performance here. Why did you choose this work for the Biennale?
It was. I had a studio visit with Christine myself, and she saw the work, and she invited me to show that piece, and she said that I was welcome to do a remake of the work if I felt like, and so actually I did a remake of the work. So I got money, and I spent a lot of time on doing a kind of more. I did a film set where I invited this kind of what is the English word? They are Statisten in German. You know, people that
comparsa in Italian, but
yeah. So I invited, of course, some friends, and I got a quite good audience, and so we did the performance 9 times, and we recorded it in a. We made a film studio and recorded it 3 times, and it was very well edited. It was very professionally done, and so I had those 2 films, and but in the end we decided to go for the first version because it had some of the. I mean, next to Mladen Stilnovic, you can't show this kind of hyper. It more had the feeling of the exhibition, the first one, and we thought it was more fun, so we decided to go for that. So now I have 2 versions.
Well, 3 maybe with the video
Actually,
of the performance.
Yeah.
Maybe you can do an exhibition with all the 3 compared. That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, why not?
Because they do. I mean, I didn't see the recorded ones that you didn't show. I just saw the performance and the one that's in the exhibition. But there's a slight difference in them. In the reaction, maybe of the laughter, of the words, the text, more or less improvised.
Because there's always something when you tell an anecdote, or when you tell something for the first time, it's always more. It feels more right. It's more interesting to tell it.
Yeah.
And if you do, I don't know how people can be actors. They really have to do the same thing over and over again. That must take so much energy. So of course it was much more scripted when I did it there. And sorry.
How many times did you do it during the opening?
I did it 3 times.
3
during
times.
the opening. Yeah. And but it was really it was quite funny to have those statisticians, this professional audience, because they're used to being in films, and they all have this inside the belly that they want to glow as actors. So they were, and I asked them to participate as much as they could, and they were really. I mean, I really love some of the moments where you can see that they're really trying to help me, or they're really trying to laugh, and they're really trying to be positive. Yeah, and you know, there was one guy had this. I mean, I'm sure he looked at James Dean maybe 1,000 of times, but he was really always putting this face up with this James Dean face with this smile, you know. There was. I would love to show it. This film actually, or this performance. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Actually, this makes me thinking: is this a common practice for artists to, redo their performances with comparse? I mean, because, the way now you tell it, it sounds really funny, and I think in some way it is funny.
Like to redo the.
To redo a performance, and the audience are actually actors, or it's comparses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I really like the idea, and I think it also works. But what was?
If you know if anybody else has done it in that way.
I have no idea.
I mean, you have tried it now, and you have then decided, no, the original one was nicer. From its.
At least for this context, yeah, yeah, it worked better with the idea of the Biennale. It worked much better.
I now start to question, from the performances that I've seen in other exhibitions or so, what of these maybe have been, been real performances on a Friday night, or more performances that have been afterwards staged and recorded again. Feels different for me as a viewer.
Yeah, of course you can't have the same, what can you say, authenticity or the same kind of energy in the performance when it's yeah. So it's another feeling. It's another way. I mean, you have a lot of possibilities once you edit the piece, and you can make yourself look much nicer and much more, you know.
You can have some close-ups and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. You can really, you can tune yourself in a lot of ways. And yeah, I mean, it's. I definitely didn't want to do just the performance again. I wanted to do something else. So it's two very different versions. And yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a question next to you.
So I would maybe love to tap into your anecdote from before, because like you started mentioning that James Dean character reaction, because I'm always like very fond of like observing audiences as well.
Yeah.
And maybe you could give a few anecdotes of like really unexpected reactions, or your worst or favorite reaction to this particular piece. I think that's always quite exciting. What's your
I think
view of,
definitely this guy that was always doing this. I can't do this, but he was always doing this face, and I could see my cameraman sometimes. He was just, what is he really doing that? So we was filming him a lot, and there was this this lady that really had this kind of, she was this poser kind of personality. And there was a point where I invited the audience to come and sit on the chair. Of course, nobody wanted to, but it was a bit cold in this. It was during the winter in Como. It was pretty cold, so I got the kind of the fur coat of this actress lady. She was really, yeah, she was great really, because she really wanted to be on the stage. That's and she came and gave me her fur coat. I was sitting in that, and And then she was standing beside, and she was just smiling. Yeah, that was. Yeah, but there was a lot. There was also some really a hippie crowd, and they really. I think they didn't get the irony in it. They were really into kind of this kind of esoteric vibe, and so. I don't know. I mean, they had some really interesting, I think, reactions, because I think they got a bit angry at a point.
Why?
Yeah, why was it? I can't remember exactly. No. But
It was not serious enough for them, or?
Well, I gave one of them an avocado, and that was.
And he didn't like
no,
avocado.
he liked that. Actually, I can't remember, but he just got quite. Anyhow, maybe you should just continue with something else, because I can't remember actually.
Yes, please.
Assuming you spent some time at the Biennale, apart from just doing performances, is there any work that's particularly struck you while you've been here from other artists?
I would say that, well, for me it's always a pleasure to be in the company of Franz West. I was very honored to show my work next to his work, because he's an artist that I have had very great respect for, and I enjoyed the Scandinavian pavilion very much that Mads Stensted he was doing. I also enjoy the work of Mladen Stilowitz that starts the central pavilion where he's sleeping. I mean, this whole sleeping theme, I like that. There's of course, the Scandinavian pavilion created by Mads Stensted. I think that's a quite strong one. Of course, the German pavilion is good. The French pavilion I joined today, where I actually saw some of the musical performance. That was very nice. So, I think in general it's a very good. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of the whole Biennale. That there are so many people that come here to enjoy art, and the weather is good. People travel a long way to get here, and the Swiss pavilion I enjoyed. I mean, there was a lot of good moments, I would say. Also the Charles Atlas piece just in here, I mean, an amazing piece. That's it's just a statement in the middle of the Arsenale. It's a great one. I could continue, but maybe it's better you go and...
Are there any questions on there? No. So, another thing I wanted to ask you, well, this is, I think, one of the only performance pieces you did, right?
Yes, well, it's kind of...
You did a few videos, but as a performance, this is the only work, or?
Yeah, well, it's kind of me performing in front of an audience.
Yeah.
What I have done otherwise is more... No, I have actually done a performance in the studio of Alexander Calder in France, where the Danish artist Jeppe Hein, he had a residency there, and he created a show around circus, because Alexander Calder was also interested in circus, so he created a show around circus, and I was doing a horse show there.
A horse show?
A horse show, yeah.
Tell us something about it.
That was... well, I decided to go to just go there and then see what I could find on the way there. And then in the airport, I came across this shop with where they would sell this blow-up helium horses and all kind of animals. And I would stay there for some time, so I made a kind of a circus show where I would do tricks with this toy blow-up animals there. And
there was not only the horse, though, I think.
no, there was also a pig, and
Yeah.
it was a whole farm collection of farm animals. Yeah. So I was doing tricks with them where they would jump on a pedestal and they would turn around in the air. They would
Dance.
bend in front of the master, and it was really very joyful to do it there in the studio with that audience. I did it later on at the press conference at the Art Cologne, which was a total different vibe.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise it has mostly been videos, but with me sort of performing in front of the camera.
Yeah, you also did a video called on sculpture, right? Because most of your work is about sculpture, or is sculpture. So tell us something about your sculpture and what sculpture is for you. Because I know that in the video you ask about what is sculpture. So tell us what is sculpture for you. And what's maybe the different, because in a lot of your works there are a lot of everyday objects that are used in a different way, maybe. So what's the difference between sculpture and object?
Well, what is the sculpture? That's really what I'm trying to find out. That's that's what sculpture is for me. That's
I'll offer you some wine for distraction.
maybe I should have a glass of wine.
Which one?
Maybe I'll try the white wine. It's good with this setup here where you can have a drink and think about these tricky questions.
I think.
We thought you had before, so you had maybe the drinks before as well?
I like a quote by Dieter Roth. I think it goes something like this, that objects are the pores in the skin of the world that makes us breathe. Pores, I think it's pores. The one in the, pores in the skin of the world that makes us breathe. I like that quote. But I'm really fascinated how we are dealing with the objects, how much they in a way direct us, and how much, I mean, it's a kind of dialectical thing in a way that the objects really direct us, they really controls us, but on the other hand, they're also our tools. And I guess sculpture, that's something that is dealing with those questions. I mean, and what is value? I mean, that is a really big question. What is sculpture, really? That's but for me, the objects are also something that I use to think, and it's a kind of the objects. They are kind of also tools to try to understand the world.
Yes, of course.
And understand yourself. That's basically what.
Do you collect a lot of objects?
Well, not so much anymore. I'm more precise with what I collect, I think. But now I have a car, now I have a larger studio, so of course I collect things But no, I don't. I'm not the kind of guy that buys a lot of stuff. I don't need to have much stuff around me, really.
No, I mean more for work than for.
For work, yeah. It's yeah. Of course, I collect a lot of things. That's at least if I. Sometimes you can't. You know, you can't move a thing that is 200 tons. You have to. Yeah. It also depends which possibility if you have to make it into an artwork in a way. Of course, small objects you can collect a lot of them and use in your studio.
Yeah, there's a question there.
Maybe on that one, because like when I think of sculptures, I often think of like material, and you mentioned beforehand that you would like collect things from your immediate surrounding, or kind of also like finding things maybe on the streets. And I usually go for texture. Is there a quality for you where you say when you like decide, oh, this one is something that I want to do something with, so you take it along? Does it have a certain quality? Like, is it grotesque or weird or big, or is there something that grasps your attention?
Yeah, that's a quite precise description of it. That's. I mean, I have a lot of criteria. Of course, the grotesque is something that I find exciting. The texture too, but and the kind of sometimes it's kind of the wordplay that the object sort of has. So it's more a kind of intellectual thing. I like to think. I mean, you always know if an object have a potential to help you creating sort of art objects.
Can you maybe give us some examples of things that you like recently picked up? I just picked up a water gun on the street like a month ago,
What
like
did you
huge
do with it?
super soaker. I don't know. I just like I took it along because it was just like really neon colored, huge super soaker gun that you used to like buy when you're like 10, or it's like you beg your parents because you want to have it. Now I have it. I don't really know what to do with it, but like, I still took it along. So maybe do you have some examples of?
Yeah, I had a moment where I collected bicycles a lot, and that would end up in some sculptures, and then I collected quite some cables. Where I had my studio before, they had this gentrification process, and they were built. It was by the beach in near Copenhagen, and so they were building these huge housing blocks there, and I found quite some of those electric cables that would support electric power to this whole block. So there were some kind of thick cables, and they were bent into some very interesting shapes, and so I brought quite some of them home because I'm very interested in infrastructure. That's you ask what I collect, and I really like infrastructure, the things that kind of in a way connect us, but also are this kind of very, can I say, hardware material, this very cold technological materials, then I printed some. I have this big printer, inkjet printer, and I printed some snakeskin that I would put around this object, and I had a lot of fun out of that because I imagine a lot of things around this dumb object. Really, I spent a whole month on that. That was so that's an example of.
Any questions? No. Yeah, please.
So are you commissioned to do any work, like, you know, how do you sustain yourself as an artist?
It's actually I've had a job for 12 years now. Also when I lived in Austria, where I take care of a guy in a wheelchair. What do you call it in English?
Carer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
caretaker. So I work once a week for 24 hours, and I take care of him. He's a good friend. He's a musician and very, very nice guy. He smokes a lot of weed and listens to a lot of music. But it's so that's also a way to survive financially. And then the other part is selling and then grants. So it's yeah. So that's how I support myself basically.
Sorry, what was the other part? What was the last thing you said?
It's from selling works and from also grants and the Art Council, Danish Art Council. So thank you to the Danish Art Council.
And can you foresee any other future for artists to sustain themselves in the creative field without having to do that?
Yeah, of course, a gallery that can actually sell my work, that would be another option.
Okay, but you can't see anything beyond that?
Then there's public sculpture. I mean, I'm also actually refurbishing some apartments and selling them. That's also another way that I'm actually working on at the moment. Designing. I mean, for me, the Biennale has also been the right occasion to do design objects, and I can feel already now that there's another demand for design objects. They're much easier to sell, at least in my case, they're much easier to sell. And,
okay, thank you.
So I wanted to go back and ask you, when did you decide to become an artist? Why?
Why?
And also where you studied art and who inspired you as an artist from the past? Because you have a quite unconventional, very ironical approach to sculpture and art in general.
Well, I actually started my career, what you would say, my adult career as traveling a lot. I was traveling more or less all the time. Would travel, go home, have a shitty job, go traveling again, and I spent a lot of time doing that, traveling around the world. And then I decided to become to become a school teacher, which I did. But then during that study, I was involving myself in the, what do you call it, cabaret, the annual cabaret, and I got very passionate about it, and I spent a long time doing
And that was at the age of about, approximately?
That's
15, 20, 25?
Let's say 25, something like that. And but then I really found a passion for art there, and so I thought I wanted to pursue that career or take that path. But I was studying at this teachers' college, and but then I think really what made me really go for it was I went to Brazil, no, actually to Mexico with some good friends, and we went in the desert to drink some peyote, the local, what can you call it, local drink there.
Yeah.
And that, for me, I had such a strong experience with this psychedelic substance that, for me, that was a kind of turning point. I really had very strong visions, so I really decided, okay, I have to go for this. I have to spend all my time doing this, and so I quit the teachers' college, and then I went to a preparation school and got into the art academy, and I studied 2 years in Copenhagen, and then I decided this was not really where I would find my kind of artistic family, or and then I went to Austria to study with Heimo Sobernik, and that was a very good decision, and so I had a very good time there. I was very influenced by this context, this Viennese context, and that's still, I still have a strong connection to that context.
Is there a question down there? Yes, please.
As an artist, do you ever feel like you need a break in order to get new inspiration? Because I feel like that sometimes.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Do you ever feel that you need a break from art just to get new inspiration? Because sometimes it can be a lot. I feel like that sometimes. So
Yeah, to have a break?
yeah, in order to get new inspiration and free your mind.
Yes, I do. I mean, yes, sometimes I take breaks, do something else. I have 2 kids, so that gives me some breaks. So,
A lot of everyday breaks.
but I think when you are a younger artist, I don't know if I'm a younger artist or not, but as a younger artist, you tend to think that you have to work all the time. And maybe you don't have to work all the time. Maybe it's also good to, I mean, in the end it's called recreation, right? And that's maybe a good word.
What do you do for recreation? Apart from the kids?
Yeah, what do I do? Actually, I spend a lot of time building a house. So I don't have so much recreation at the moment. Actually, I go fishing with my son. That's the recreation that I do. I enjoy that very much.
And do you still travel a lot?
Not so much anymore. That's mostly in connection with doing exhibitions.
Okay, so are there any other questions? Well, yeah, please.
So what are you working on now? Obviously the film is from 7 years ago. What's now?
This levitation video, it's more kind of how the works from here, they are continuing. So I'm more working on how to make those work travel. And the levitation video is going to Japan, to a museum there. And the chairs, they're going to be included in some exhibitions in Copenhagen. So I'm working on producing more of those chairs actually right now, and finishing my studio. That's because I have to build up the studio. So I'm working on that right now actually.
Okay. So if there are no other questions, I'll first of all thank Søren for being with us today and sharing so many things and answering generously to all our questions. And thank you to our guests, and goodbye everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks.